welcome back to another episode of Rink-Side with Hits and Clips. In this episode, we have our official playoff brackets for the OHL, WHL, and the QMJHL. We also have some big news that just came out from the Western Hockey League in terms of expansions. Before then, be sure to subscribe over to our YouTube channel, as well as follow us over on Spotify and Bluesky for all of our latest videos, podcast episodes, and posts that are in regards to our channel. So let's get started. Well, the 2024-25 regular season came to an end for the CHL last night, as we have found our matchups for the playoffs, which will start this coming Friday. Now, the last two spots for the Ontario Hockey League couldn't be determined until the Ottawa, North Bay, and Sarnia games all concluded yesterday afternoon. The Sarnia Sting, well, they lost to the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds yesterday afternoon with a final score of 5-2. The North Bay Battalion shut out the Sudbury Wolves 4-0, and the Ottawa 67s lost to the Brantford Bulldogs on the road 7-2, which means that the North Bay Battalion would take that last spot in the Eastern Conference because the Battalion were already 2 points ahead of Ottawa in the East, where Owen Sound was already 2 points ahead of Sarnia in the Western Conference. But if Sarnia had won that game and Ottawa had won and North Bay had lost, we would have had two tiebreakers last night. But looks like we don't have any tiebreakers this season, as the North Bay Battalion and the Owen Sound Attack would claim those last two spots to clinch the playoffs. As a result, who are the matchups? Well, as I mentioned before, the first round of the playoffs are going to start this coming Friday, which would end up being on Friday, March 28th. And these are the results. Well, in the Eastern Conference, Brantford clinched the top of the conference, which means they would play the lower seed. So it's going to be the Brantford Bulldogs versus the North Bay Battalion in round number 1. Then we will have the Barrie Colts versus the Niagara Ice Dogs. For the other matchup, the Kingston Frontenacs versus the Sudbury Wolves, and then the Oshawa Generals will face off against the Brampton Steelheads in round number 1 for the Eastern Conference. As for the Western, well, as we know, the London Knights have been top of the league for as long as I could ever remember, and the London Knights will face the bottom seed, who is the Owen Sound Attack. London and Owen Sound will go head-to-head in round number 1. Then it will be the Windsor Spitfires versus the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds. The Kitchener Rangers will go up against the Flint Firebirds, and then the Saginaw Spirit will face off against the Erie Otters. I have to say, after seeing Sarnia, Guelph, Ottawa, and Peterborough all get eliminated last night, it was quite depressing actually, because I really do like those four teams, and so just to see how Ottawa, Peterborough, Guelph, and Sarnia, they just weren't in the fight for this year. Not to mention the Guelph Storm won the championship in 2019 and Peterborough winning the championship 2 years ago. And then just to see those two teams collapse and end up in dead last place for both of their conferences is quite of a bit of a shock in my opinion. So to start the third period though, the Sarnia Sting were down 2-1. Then we got 9 minutes into the game and it was 3-1 Sault Ste. Marie. Then 4-1, then 5-1, 5-2, and they ended up losing, which meant the Sarnia Sting were eliminated, and that's fairly disappointing. I know that there were a lot of overagers and graduates for a lot of these franchises that were honored before and during the games. And I just want to reach out a very special congratulations to every single player who ended up finishing off their OHL career last night, specifically for Ottawa, Peterborough, Guelph, and Sarnia. There's just a lot of overager players that have had a really strong impact for a lot of these franchises, who a lot of them are very well drafted by an NHL team, and they are prospects of a lot of these professional teams. So we'll have to see how the playoffs unravel for the the OHL side of things, but we will do a further update. Both me and my partner Zach will do a further update to recap the overall results for round number 1 and how the playoffs are going so far in the OHL. What I want to do first is I want to go to the QMJHL. I was going to cover the WHL next, but the reason why I'm going to save the WHL for last is we had some pretty big news that was released on the Western Hockey League page this morning. So just looking at the overall playoff picture for the QMJHL, the Drummondville Voyagers, they will face off against the Rouyn-Noranda Huskies in the first round, where Blainville Boissebrand, they will take on the Gatineau Olympiques, the Sherbrooke Phoenix will take on Val-Odor, and the Victoriaville Tigers will take on the Shawinigan Cataracts, where in the Eastern Conference, the St. John Sea Dogs will take on Chicoutimi, the Quebec Ramparts will take on Baie-Comeau, the Charlottetown Islanders will take on the Rimouski Oceanic, the Halifax Mooseheads will take on the Moncton Wildcats, a good, solid Maritimes rival right there, and the Cape Breton Eagles will take on Acadie Bathurst, aka known as the Newfoundland Raymond, who will be taking their first steps into the QMJHL for next season. So even though Acadie Bathurst Titans made the playoffs, this is going to be their last appearance before they relocate to Newfoundland. So that's just an overall picture of the playoff format for the QMJHL. And now we are going to head over to the WHL. It was the Medicine Hat Tigers who clinched the top of the Eastern Conference, and it was the Everett Silvertips who clinched the top of the Western Conference. So those two teams will have the top seed for both conferences. As for the Eastern Conference, the Medicine Hat Tigers will take on the Swift Current Broncos. The Prince Albert Raiders will take on the Edmonton Oil Kings. The Calgary Hitmen will take on the Saskatoon Blades. And then the Lethbridge Hurricanes will take on the Brandon Wheat Kings. As for the Western Conference, the Everett Silvertips will take on the Seattle Thunderbirds, a big U.S. division rival right there. The Victoria Royals will face off against the Tri-City Americans. Spokane Chiefs, they'll take on the Vancouver Giants. And the Prince George Cougars will have yet another conference final rematch, as they will take on the Portland Winterhawks. So that's your overall playoff picture for all three leagues in the CHL. Let me know who you think is going to move on to round 2. Are there going to be any upsets this year for any teams? For example, a bottom seed knocking out a top seed. We'll have to see how all of that unfolds. But as we're still on the WHL, we are going to cover some news that broke this morning. Now, apparently this team that I'm going to mention, they released it on their Instagram page that they were going live in the morning at 10:30 a.m. And that news is that the WHL has awarded the official expansion of 2 franchises to the Western Hockey League. It will be the Penticton Vs coming over from the BCHL, and to be determined for a team name, Chilliwack BC will be getting their new team, but Chilliwack, they're going to be coming into the league in the 2026-27 season. So we're going to see the Penticton Vs make an appearance this fall going into next season. However, Chilliwack isn't going to make an appearance for another 2 seasons in 2026-2027. And I think that all comes back to an overall team name. From what I'm getting, the assumption from is that Penticton is ready to go for next season, and they're just moving from one league over to the next, where Chilliwack, I think they've got a franchise building to do. I don't know if that means you have an overall draft and that particular franchise chooses a player from each team, or it's going to be another team relocating from another league over to Chilliwack. Maybe it's going to even be another team already in the Western Hockey League making that transition over to Chilliwack. Now, with these 2 teams being in British Columbia, they are going to both join the BC division, which means we're going to have 23 teams to start the 2025-2026 season, and then 24 teams to start the 2026-27 season. So that is the news that broke out of the Western Hockey League League today. Now, as mentioned, the Penticton Vs will be making an appearance next season. However, the franchise of Chilliwack has launched their application process to join in the next 2 seasons. So that pretty much means that at the end of the 2026 Memorial Cup hosted by the Kelowna Rockets, Chilliwack will come into the league at that time. So just wanted to announce that news. If you want to read the entire story article, it's over on the Western Hockey League website. It has recently just been published early this morning, so you can check that out if you want more details on that. Now, with the relocation of Acadie Bathurst in the QMJHL to Newfoundland for the fall, and the Penticton Vs over into the Western Hockey League for this season, and then Chilliwack into the Western Hockey League for the season after, do we see any expansions into the OHL or relocations for that matter? We have heard that cities like Cornwall, Ontario, Niagara Falls, USA have been 2 particular cities in general that the league has seriously been looking into for expansions, but there's been no definite news in terms of that. Obviously, there's the rumors that the Muskegon Lumberjacks and the Youngstown Phantoms of the UCHL are coming over to the OHL, but the league actually has to approve that. So even if the OHL approves it and the franchise will approve it, the UCHL league that they were once in also has to approve it, and apparently they rejected the request. So I guess we're going to be staying at 20 teams in the OHL for that matter at the moment, but I wouldn't be staying on that for too long because we might have some expansion or relocation news in the matter of the next year or two on the Ontario Hockey League side of things. But thank you everyone for tuning into this episode. We really appreciate it. Be sure to like our videos over on YouTube. Follow us over on Spotify and Bluesky if you want more updates on our podcast and our channel. And be sure to subscribe to YouTube as well for further notifications on our videos and podcasts. We really appreciate your support, everyone, and we will talk to you again soon.